A Richmond man pleaded guilty Monday to multiple drug distribution counts in Chesterfield County in a case with broad ties to a South Richmond street gang whose members sold heroin and were linked to at least 2 overdose deaths and 1 slaying, authorities said. Stephen Diallo Green, 24, a member of the 004/Foxwood gang who is awaiting trial in Richmond for a January 29 killing, pleaded guilty in Chesterfield Circuit Court to 4 counts of distributing heroin, 1 count of manufacturing a controlled substance and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. In exchange for his pleas, the prosecution withdrew 6 accompanying counts. Green was one of half a dozen 004 gang members charged with drug distribution in Chesterfield as the result of a joint Chesterfield-Richmond police investigation into the local heroin trade and spree overdoses of 4 people, 2 of whom died, in Chesterfield dating to the fall of 2016. A Chesterfield man was found dead October 29, 2016. At a home in the 2800 block of Gainford Circle in the county, and a woman was found dead January 3 in the 4200 block of Briarwood Drive, also in Chesterfield. Both died of toxic effects of heroin laced with fentanyl. The name and phone number of one of the gang members, Daquan H. Wilkins, was linked to the victims through cell phone records, authorities said. On January 29, 31-year-old Joseph Boyle was found shot to death inside a crashed SUV in the 5000 block of Sneed Road in the Foxwood apartment complex in South Richmond, where the 004 gang was based. Green was charged with Boyle's killing, as well as attempted murder, maliciously shooting into an occupied vehicle and several firearm counts. His jury trial is set for December 11 in Richmond Circuit Court. One of the main functions of the gang, or the purpose of the gang, is the distribution of narcotics, Chesterfield Deputy Commonwealth's Attorney Larry Hogan said after Monday's hearing. And in this case, our experience recently has been with heroin, although Mr. Green was also selling cocaine to our source. Hogan said the gang members, some of whom are remnants of the former Broad Rock Boys gang, were rounded up in February after Chesterfield and Richmond police served more than half a dozen search warrants at locations in both localities. In addition to narcotics, detectives confiscated a number of weapons, including assault-style rifles and drum magazines that can hold 50 rounds. They've been tied into other violent crimes, such as attempted murder, malicious wounding and felony assaults, Hogan said. The gang members even produced their own professional quality rap video that was posted on YouTube. It was done right there at the Foxwood Apartments, the prosecutor said. Authorities said the other gang members charged in Chesterfield include Daquan H. Wilkins, 28, who pleaded guilty September 27 to distribution of heroin as a third offense and criminal gang participation. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison with 40 suspended. Anthony T. Code, 28, who pleaded guilty August 29 to 2 counts of distributing a controlled substance and 1 count of criminal gang participation. He was sentenced to 60 years in prison with all but 3 years suspended. Jeremy J. Taylor, 29, who pleaded no contest August 29 to possession with intent to distribute controlled drugs, conspiracy, criminal gang participation and felony hit and run. He was sentenced to 80 years in prison with all but 2 years, 4 months and 15 days suspended. Dwayne M. Johnson, 28, whose case is set for a November 30 jury trial on charges of possession of a controlled substance, possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute, obstruction of justice and criminal gang participation. Robert L. Langston, 24, who pleaded guilty May 30 to possession of marijuana as a second offense and was sentenced to 12 months in jail with 11 suspended. In Richmond, Langston faces charges of possession of heroin, possession of cocaine, 2 counts of possession of a firearm while in possession of controlled substances and possession of a gun by a convicted felon. Evidence in the case was presented in Richmond Circuit Court on Monday, but a decision was withheld until November 16. In the Green case in Chesterfield, Hogan told the court in a summary of evidence that Green became a suspect after police on January 4 discovered a man and a woman had overdosed on heroin inside a home on Beaufort Road. After recovering, the victims provided investigators with a phone number and an address on Sneed Road in Richmond, where they obtained their drugs. That led to a confidential police informant contacting Green to buy heroin. They met January 6 at the Red Robin restaurant at Chesterfield Town Centre and completed a breed transaction that was recorded on a cell phone camera by undercover detectives, Hogan said. Another controlled drug buy with Green was conducted January 10 at a Waffle House in Chesterfield, and on January 12 and January 19 at the same Red Robin restaurant. In each case, Green sold the informant a gram or less of heroin for about $100. At one point following Green's arrest, and after police searched his vehicle and found a 9mm pistol and 2 magazines with ammunition, a Richmond detective asked him if the weapon had been used in the January 29 fatal shooting in Richmond. Green replied, "I'm 100% sure that weapon wasn't involved in the homicide," Hogan quoted Green as saying in his court summary. Green faces 5 to 10 years in prison when he is sentenced January 24. Hogan said the gang arrests were the result of really good police work by Chesterfield narcotics officers, along with good assistance from Richmond police gang and homicide detectives. "They kind of connected the dots for us," the prosecutor said of Richmond's contribution. Hogan said police continue to investigate whether Wilkins can be tied to the heroin sold to the Chesterfield residents who died of overdoses on October 29, 2016, and January 3. Wilkins could face felony homicide charges if police can prove he supplied the victims with the heroin.